This is the U.S. Senate Democratic runoff debate. Good evening. We're coming to you live from the KXAN studios in Austin. We're bringing you this debate between the two Democrats in the runoff election for the U.S. Senate nomination. As you can see, we're following the coronavirus social distancing guidelines set up by the CDC to keep us all safe here tonight. I'm Robert Hadlock. I'm the anchor at KXAN News here in Austin. I'll be your host for tonight's Nexstar Media Group special presentation. Let's introduce you to our candidates tonight who are here. We begin with MJ Hegar. She's an Air Force combat veteran from Round Rock, and State Senator Royce West. He's represented the Dallas area in the Texas Senate since 1993. Before we get started, we first want to let you know this debate will be seen on air and online in all 14 Nexstar Media Group markets covering the great state of Texas, from El Paso all the way to Texarkana and from Brownsville up to Amarillo and beyond. And we also have a television partner airing this debate in San Antonio on KSAT 12, plus national public radio stations throughout Texas are broadcasting this debate as well. We have two moderators tonight. Gromer Jeffers, a native of Chicago, is a political writer for the Dallas Morning News, where he has covered Texas campaigns for 2 decades. Sally Hernandez is originally from El Paso. She's a reporter and anchor here at KXAN, and she's been with us here for more than 20 years. Here's a quick rundown of the rules for this evening. Each candidate will get 60 seconds to answer the main questions, 30 seconds for rebuttal, and if needed, 30 seconds for any follow-ups. The sound of a bell will ring when their time is up. Each candidate will get 30 seconds to give an opening statement and 30 seconds for a closing statements. Later in tonight's debate, we have a couple of questions that deal with their individual campaigns where there will be no rebuttal. We held a drawing last week to determine who goes first. Ms. Hegar will begin with her opening statement. Please go ahead. You have 30 seconds.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. I am so excited to have an opportunity to share with you my vision for this great state. And I know I'm coming to you at a time when we are facing such great challenges, things like horrific racial injustice. The number of Texans that don't have access to health care has skyrocketed, and we were already the worst in the country. The economic situation where the economy right now does not work for everybody. But if we're able to get out of this on the other side stronger, we have to make sure that we instill leaders that understand how to bring people together to build broad coalitions to actually get things done for folks.
Thank you, Ms. Hegar. Mr. West, your statement, please. You have 30 seconds.
This election is not about talking points, it's about action. My grandfather told me a long time ago that you can kind of look at a person's past to see what they're going to do in the future. For the past 27 years, I've gained knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, and I've fought for issues that are important to the state of Texas. I do the same thing in Washington. We cannot allow this energy that we've harnessed as a result of the horrific death of George Floyd. We must harness that energy and focus it with laser certainty in order to make certain that we affect change in the state of Texas. I'm the person that's able to do it.
Thank you both. Now let's turn things over to Sally and Gromer for the first question. Sally.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you both for being here. We're going to start off tonight with what we have all been living through for the past few weeks on social media and on television. Of course, we're talking about protests in recent days that have put a new spotlight on a larger question of racial justice. And I just want you to turn over here, candidates, if you can, to the screen. Right here on this video, you'll see that this was a protest earlier today in front of the Austin Police Department headquarters. There were many people out there protesting, holding signs, and police officers there as well. Our first question tonight, Ms. Hegar, is a simple one. What do you believe we need to do to turn the concerns of our citizens that you're seeing right here into action? And you have 60 seconds for this question.
You know, I think there is so much work that needs to be done, and it's going to be hard work. And obviously, we start with criminal justice reform. I support Campaign Zero, things like police being more representative of the communities that they're policing, community leaders having a voice. But we really have to go beyond that. It really needs to be a full systemic reform where we're not seeing the healthcare inequities. We see an economy that's working for everybody regardless of skin color. We're seeing access to capital for small business, educational opportunities. Really the American dream of the opportunity that if you work hard and you're willing to sacrifice, you can make it in this country is not the reality for so many groups in this country, and it's something that we absolutely have to change. Now, our current senator, John Cornyn, has tweeted out articles saying that there is no evidence of racial injustice in our criminal justice system. So when we have leaders like that, we have to hold them accountable for being blind and not being willing to come to the table and actually make solutions and work with community leaders to bring forward the solutions that this country, it's way overdue.
Okay, thank you, Mr. West. Same question to you, and I'll repeat it one more time. How are you going to turn concerns of our citizens into actual action? And you have 60 seconds as well.
Well, based on exactly what I've been doing in the past, I have been making certain that I engage in action. When you begin to look at body cameras, which has frankly been one of the most used tools in terms of showing people exactly what injustice looks like in this country, you can be assured that it was Royce West that led that charge in the Texas State Senate. As it relates to reforms, but yes, we do need to make certain we have reforms in terms of the police department. President Barack Obama had the 21st Century Commission. We need to make certain we look at those recommendations there. And of course, the organization Zero, we need to make certain we look at those recommendations. There are 50 million different recommendations concerning systemic change. And we've got to make certain that we come together, figure out exactly what the priorities are, and make certain we move in that direction in order to implement those policies. But yet, we also have to look at education. We have to look at health and human services. We have to look at economic development, specifically jobs for African Americans, which right now, unemployment amongst African Americans is right at about 17%. So we've got to look at that systemic change in terms of economic opportunities for African Americans. I'm the person who can get it done.
Okay, Ms. Hegar, I want to turn to you, and this is a follow-up question to the same topic. What would you plan to do to end police brutality? And if you could answer within 30 seconds.
So we don't have a few poison apples. We have a plague of locusts that have come through the orchard. Right? We need to make sure that transparency and accountability are supported. There are good leaders like Chief Acevedo in Houston who are trying to reform, and they are being stopped by the systems that are put in place. So we have to make sure that we have leaders that can legislate a pathway for reform-minded commissioners to be able to actually make the changes. Now, again, we have to go beyond that. We do have to do body cameras. We have to have legislation around what that means so that we have standards on releasing that video to the public.
Okay, Mr. West, how do you plan to end police brutality in 30 seconds?
I think that we need to have a uniform definition of the use of deadly force across this country. We use the purse strings of the federal government to make certain that states adopt what that definition is across the country. We need to make certain we also, to the extent that there are hate crime laws in various states, if a police officer is found guilty of murder as a result of race, then we need to make certain that hate crime laws are appropriate and that the punishment is in fact enhanced. We need to make certain that we have local accountability and transparency amongst police departments, specifically the policies are consistent across the state.
Okay, thank you both. Gromer has our next question for tonight.
Thank you, Sally. Across the country and in Texas, we've had peaceful protests. But for much of the time, the peaceful protests haven't been the protests getting or dominating the headlines. It's been moments like this captured in Austin. Looting and violence has taken center stage in several of the protests around the country. Mr. West, and I know you've attended a protest in Dallas, but what do you say to people who see these protests and say it's not about fighting racial injustice, it's about opportunism?
Well, I would agree with them. It is about opportunism, but it's also an issue that we don't want to divert the attention from exactly what the issue is. The issue is racial injustice. And I'm hoping and praying that the media, although it needs to be covered, that we don't lose focus in terms of what the issue is. The issue is making sure that we have structural change in the world. You begin to think about what's going on, not only here in Texas, but across the country, across the world. We're finally getting to the point where we can harness that energy in order to effectuate change. And so we need to stay focused on effectuating change and not be diverted about the different types of looting that's going on. Those individuals that are found to have done that need to pay the ultimate price.
Ms. Hegar, what would you say to people concerned about looting? And you have 60 seconds.
Yeah, I would disagree. I don't think it's opportunism. I think it's anger at a system that has been absolutely oppressing people and stopping them from being able to achieve their potential and pursue the American dream. I don't support anybody who is looting or harming businesses. I'm a small business advocate, and I know that's got to be heartbreaking for the owners of those businesses. But I'm here to tell you that when I see the militarization of our police force, both with tactics and equipment. When you militarize the police force, you're not doing them any favors because the civilian population will respond in a way that they are at war. We're sending the wrong message with the tactics that we are encouraging our police forces to use. When you look at what happened in Lafayette Square, that was something that was more reminiscent of China's government's actions in Hong Kong. It was something that embarrassed me and broke my heart. And it's why I'm running for the Senate, because I am going to go to DC and make sure that our government does not oppress people and take away their First Amendment rights. I took an oath when I put on the uniform to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And this infringement of our First Amendment rights is a domestic threat to our Constitution.
Thank you. Mr. West, as a follow-up, Senator Bernie Sanders last week tweeted that every police department that violates the civil rights of an individual should be stripped of federal funding. If you're in the Senate, you may have to consider such legislation. Do you agree with Senator Sanders?
I think that if we have a police department where there's some bad apples in it, where they have in fact violated a person's rights and no action is taken by that police department, then yes, we need to look at issues concerning their funding and taking over that police department. The issue becomes one of whether just because you have one incident, whether or not you should strip the funding for the entire police department. I'm not for that, but if the police department doesn't do anything about it, then we need to look at the federal funding for it. Just as I mentioned a few moments ago, we've got to make certain that they implement a consistent definition concerning the use of deadly force.
Ms. Hegar,
funding is definitely one of the tools that we should be considering using. However, as someone who has been granted the authority to use deadly force when I was in the military as a combat search and rescue helicopter pilot, as you know, Gromer, when we were shot down and surrounded by 150 enemy fighters, we got everybody out alive, and I was very cognizant of the fact that we had the authority to use deadly force. Now, so I sympathize, but at the same time, the standards are so high for when we can pull the trigger in the military. I would like to see a similar standard in our police force, and I am dedicated to supporting the leaders within the law enforcement community who want to see that same transparency and accountability.
Thank you. Sally has a question.
Okay, yes, we're going to move on to the next subject, candidates. This one has to do with another story, another major thing that has been dominating our lives for the past few months. Of course, we're still in a pandemic. Congress approved $3 trillion in stimulus to help individuals and businesses hurt by COVID-19. A lot of people right now in this nation say they need another round of stimulus. But the latest job reports gives the indication that the economy is turning around. So, Ms. Hegar, do you support more stimulus, and for whom?
So I think the economy is starting to turn around, which is really great news for everyone. At what price? I worry that the way that we're opening is going to actually cause more damage to small businesses because we're not opening with testing. We're not opening with making sure people are covered for testing and making sure that we are putting in place, for example, in Texas, we're not even able right now to vote by mail. So I'm very concerned about how we're opening and how that's going to cause a second wave. But you know, I'm for anything that's going to help our economy as long as it's keeping people safe.
Okay, Mr. West, do you support another stimulus? For whom?
I do support another stimulus, and I think that it should be going to states and cities so they can use those dollars in order to make certain that they're able to take care of their first responders and frankly, all the essential workers. Those workers that have been working each and every day, we need to make certain that those persons are provided bonuses. I concur as it relates to the testing in the state of Texas and across the country. We don't know the full ramifications of COVID yet. I have been urging the governor, and the governor has responded in terms of making certain we do additional testing across the state of Texas to see exactly what is the magnitude of this particular issue. And yes, given the number of people that are protesting, which they have a right to do, given the number of persons that are gathering at restaurants and other places, we are going to have another round of COVID. The question then becomes whether or not we're going to be ready in order to deal with that. I have a plan for us to deal with it.
Okay, following that same question, Ms. Hegar, to you first. The country's in debt, so how would you plan to pay for another round of stimulus? So this is 30 seconds.
The country's in debt, something that I am specifically outraged by because right before the pandemic, the tax reform that granted all of the tax breaks mostly to the top 1% really put us in a position to not be able to handle something like this. So we really just need responsible people in office to make these decisions who are answerable to the constituents and not the high dollar donors. I think that we need to make sure everybody's paying their fair share in taxes. Most people are pretty offended when they find out that they pay more in taxes than Amazon does. So let's make sure everybody pays their fair share. Let's make sure we have a strong economy that's actually working for everyone, because frankly, as a prior server and a bartender, we got to get people back to work to be able to contribute to the economy so that the tax revenue is there.
Okay, I'm going to head to you, Mr. West, after I follow up with you. Ms. Hegar, does that mean that you're going to raise taxes?
I'm not going to raise taxes on the middle class that's already overburdened, but I do think we need to bring taxes back to a place where people are paying their fair share, including corporations.
Okay, Mr. West, same question to you. How do you plan to pay for another round of stimulus?
Well, I think that all Americans are under the principle that we are, in fact, our brother's keeper. When you begin to look at the tax break that was given to corporations, $125 billion for corporations in this country. And so, yes, we need to rethink what happened as it relates to the tax law that went into effect and try to get some of that money back in order to put it in to our system in order to make certain that we reduce the probabilities of having to have a serious increase in taxes. I think that we need to look at those persons that have a net worth of $1 million or more as it relates to whether or not we should be putting a tax increase as to that particular category.
I'll give you 15 seconds to expand on that. Would you support raising taxes?
Yes, for persons that are making a million, have a net worth of $1 million or more, yes, I would.
Okay. Next question over to Gromer has to do with, of course, COVID-19 again.
Thank you, Sally. As we know, millions of Americans lost their jobs and subsequently their health care amid the COVID-19 shutdowns. Mr. West, what changes to the healthcare system needs to be made to cover everyone, to make sure everyone has access to quality health care?
Healthcare should be a fundamental right to every person in this country. And we put in place the Affordable Care Act under President Obama. We need to fix that particular legislation. We need to make certain pre-existing conditions are covered and make certain that those persons who want to use their current plans are able to do that. Many unions have great plans. We need to make sure we put that in place. As it relates to those persons that do not have insurance as a result of COVID, when the World Health Organization, as an example, declares a pandemic, number one, we need to get back into the World Health Organizations. Then I think persons should be able to join the Affordable Care Act, be able to get into the Affordable Care Act. We're going to end up having a lot of uninsured persons going to hospitals. So we've got to make certain from that vantage point that that safety net is set up and is able to be solvent during this particular period of time. And so I think that by opening up the Affordable Care Act and by making certain that our hospitals have a solvent, then we'll be able to deal with some of the problems that will be encountered through this particular COVID.
And just a quick follow in 10 seconds, if you can. Should Governor Abbott in Texas accept the Medicaid expansion deal?
Yes, to answer your question, I've been for that ever since Perry was governor of the state of Texas. $10 billion a year we would have been able to receive had we expanded Medicaid in this state. The only reason we didn't is because there are persons that want to see President Obama fail.
Ms. Hegar, same question to you.
We have a broken healthcare system in this country, but it's particularly bad here in Texas. We have the highest number of uninsured people, and we have representatives who would play political football with our lives and our health. We have clinics being politicized and shut down over pro-choice versus pro-life. Those clinics are providing life-saving care in rural areas that don't have access to things like cancer screenings, but our representatives don't care about that. So I think that we need a public option, because I want my neighbors to have access to Medicare like I did when I was on TRICARE, which is basically military Medicare. That was the best I was ever taken care of. In addition to being in the military, I spent 5 years working in healthcare during the implementation of the Affordable Care Act. So I know the changes that need to be made and the things that need to be protected while we pursue a public option. Because while I want to fight for everyone to have access to Medicare, I will also fight like hell to make sure I protect every Texan's right to choose what that means for them. So if they like their employer-provided health care, they should be able to keep it, and a woman should be able to choose what she does with her body. I will preserve choice for Texans.
And Ms. Hegar, I want to follow up with you also on Texas taking the federal deal, expansion of Medicaid deal. Should they do that? Should Governor Abbott?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I make decisions as a combat pilot based on data and actual science, and the data shows that the states that did that actually did expand Medicaid, are doing much better than Texas. And people like John Cornyn don't care that their colleagues are serving their constituents much better and more effectively than he is.
Okay, Senator West, just one quick follow on Medicaid expansion. The Republican argument is yeah, it sounds good today, but down the line, if something happens where you can't get that 90-10 match, then the Texas taxpayer is on the hook. How do you respond to that in 15 seconds? If you can?
That was the same argument they made 10 years ago. 10 years ago. So I think that's a hollow argument. The fact is that every legislative session when we come back, we have to backfill Medicaid in a supplemental appropriation bill. We've got to make certain that we expand Medicaid, and the only way we're going to do that is to begin turning this state blue so we can have leadership that's sensitive to that particular issue.
Ms. Hegar, quick, are you worried about taxpayers being on the hook?
So John Cornyn was the Affordable Care Act's top repeal salesman. And I see a pattern here with that similar argument from the Republicans that they like to shoot down solutions and they like to repeal things like the Affordable Care Act without a plan to put in place. So if I would give their objection more credibility if they also came with a plan on how we're going to get people covered. That's the part that's missing.
All right, Ms. Hegar, let me follow up a question about China. The Republicans have called for sanctions against China and an investigation into how the Chinese government handled the early days of the coronavirus outbreak. How important is it for the United States to hold China accountable? 30 seconds, if you can answer that.
That's a longer than 30-second answer, I think, Grimmer, but let me try. There's a lot of complexities with our relationship with China. The thing that I think is more important, that as we withdraw our influence around the world, whether it's funding for the World Health Organization or our presence at the UN or the human rights violations that we're committing at our southern border, we are damaging our position as a global superpower, and that's very concerning for me. So yes, it's important that we understand the technicalities of what happened with the virus and where it came from, but I think that what you're talking about is actually coming from a very racist place, like where John Cornyn tweeted out about the wet markets in China. I'm more concerned about moving ahead with solutions and making sure that we don't allow China to fill the vacuum of leadership that we're leaving behind.
Mr. West, how important is it to hold China accountable?
I think we need to hold
30 seconds if you can.
I think we need to hold all foreign countries accountable that does harm to our national security. Now the question is what do you mean when you say hold them accountable? The fact is that China is a world power, and to the extent that we can put in place different types of sanctions that are effective, then yes. But the reality is that they are a world power just like us, and they should have been sanctioned as it relates to. They should have been in a place where they were able to provide information about COVID from the very beginning, but obviously that they didn't. But the question is how effective can we be in terms of holding them accountable?
All right, Sally has a next question.
I do, Grummer, thank you. And you both have 60 seconds, a bit more, to answer this question.
Okay.
Ms. Hegar, we'll start with you. U.S. cities across the country, families are being separated. Some in your party criticize how Immigration and Customs Enforcement, also known as ICE, treats migrants in our country. The question is, do you support the idea of abolishing ICE?
So I believe that the problem is in the policies that are being implemented in the leadership. Now, I do think there's an argument to abolish an organization that when you read the letters instills fear in the community that you're trying to partner with. So I would consider it, but you know, I want to make sure we have the right leadership in place, passing down the right policies. Family separation is a bad policy. I don't care what organization is going to try to implement it. We need comprehensive immigration reform that's more reflective of American values. We should be proud of the fact that people come to us when they're seeking opportunity. It's what gives us so much influence around the world, and we are trading that away. So we need to stop the wall, because that is going to be ineffective and is not a symbol we want associated with our country. It's stealing from the military construction budget. It's stealing land from Texans, and it's not going to work anyway. We need a pathway to citizenship. We need to prioritize our national security, but guess what? We can do that without committing human rights violations.
Mr. West, would you abolish ICE?
Not under Joe Biden. I would have Joe Biden to make certain he takes a good look at it as our next president, and then make a determination as to what policies within that particular agency need to be reformed, and needless to say, the leadership that's going to be important. We need to have comprehensive immigration reform. We need to have more than 500 judges that are taking into consideration the various asylum cases. We need to make certain that we have security along the border, but we don't need a wall. You know, Trump lied about it from the very beginning. Mexico was going to pay for it. We hadn't heard that lie lately. The fact is that we've got to have the reform. We've got to make certain that DACA is in fact enforced, and from the standpoint of making certain that those young kids get an opportunity to have a pathway to citizenship. As a state senator, I had DACA members working in my office helping me to try to find policies in order to deal with those issues for them. And so we've got to have that comprehensive immigration reform. We've got to make certain that children from DACA get the opportunity to be citizens and have a pathway to citizenship.
Okay, thank you both. Gromer has the next question.
You both believe that the war on drugs have put too many people behind bars. And a lot of those people that are in prison because of marijuana offenses. Mr. West, do you support decriminalization or even the legalization of marijuana?
I'm already on the record of doing this. This past legislative session, I filed a bill in order to legalize the possession of marijuana in small amounts. And so I've worked with our district attorney in Dallas County, who's John Crusoe, in order to make certain that we don't have arrests putting more and more people in jail. Obviously, the overpopulating of jails, most of those persons end up being African-American males. And so we've got to make certain that those little drug offenses, possession, are not in, those persons don't end up going to jail or the penitentiary, so we can keep our jails available for the hardened criminals.
Ms. Hegar, in 60 seconds, do you support decriminalizing or legalizing marijuana?
So I spent 3 years on the counter drug task force, and I recognize how ineffective it is to keep marijuana illegal. It only boosts cartel profits. I am absolutely for legalizing marijuana. I think we should be expunging the records of those who have been incarcerated for such. And I think that we have a mass incarceration problem, not just in marijuana, but in the world. I mean, we are one of the top incarcerated countries in the world, and that's not something that I'm very proud of. I don't know about you. We absolutely need to get rid of private prisons because that's part of the problem. We got to get money out of politics. We have to end Citizens United. That's why I've been endorsed by End Citizens United. I'm absolutely committed to ending Citizens United because when the private prison industry cuts checks to John Cornyn, he legislates in their benefit and he makes sure that they're at max capacity, which is max profit. So there's a lot of changes that need to be made, but the good news is they're easy changes that can happen that are not complex because once you get servant leaders in there that are just putting their constituents first and not corporate donors, things become very simple.
Ms. Hegar, I'm going to stay with you right here for a follow. If you legalize marijuana, then offenders in jail for low-level marijuana offenses, should they be set free?
If there were not violent circumstances in addition, I don't think that we should be releasing violent prisoners early. But I do think that if marijuana was a complicating factor in their sentencing, then yes, we should be looking at this as a systemic reform.
Mr. West, 30 seconds. Should low-level offenders, marijuana offenses, people already in jail, if you legalize it, should you set them free?
Yes, if that's the only offense they're in jail for, yes, they should be set free. And the reality is that their records should be expunged. I led the expunction effort here in the state of Texas, also sealing of the records, and we should do that because we know what the impact of having a record is. A person can't get a job, they can't get an apartment, and so those issues normally follow them, so we need to expunge it, let them out, expunge it, and then help them to be able to become a functional citizen.
And before we leave the topic of marijuana, I have one more question for both of you. Ms. Hegar and Mr. West, raise your hand if you've ever used marijuana. Care to elaborate?
I do not.
You do not? Mr. West, care to elaborate?
It was a youthful indiscretion.
Youthful indiscretion.
There are plenty of states that have legalized it.
All right, Robert.
All right, we have some questions tailored specifically to each of your campaigns. There will be no rebuttal, but I may follow up with another question. Let's start with Ms. Hegar. You spoke of how we can't get politicians in Washington to do much for us because they're busy bickering, playing politics, and pandering to corporate donors. You've never held elected office, and now you're running for one of the highest positions in our country. If you are elected, how do you get anything done as a brand new senator from Texas? And you have 60 seconds.
So the reason I'm so confident running for this specific race is because I've already been in D.C., challenged with building a broad coalition, and I was told by powerful politicians I wouldn't be able to get it done because I wasn't a powerful donor and I didn't have any political allies and I didn't have access to the cigar smoke-filled rooms. But I'm here to tell you, once transparency and accountability are introduced and once you're able to make the argument to the right and the left why something is good for our country, as long as you're willing to sacrifice your ego, which not a lot of politicians can do, and not try to grab cameras and not care who gets the credit, you can accomplish great things. So I was able to open hundreds of thousands of jobs for women in the military in DC by building a broad coalition. And I kind of looked around and thought, why can't more people do this? I guess I'm going to have to come back here with a little bit more authority.
And would you support a term limits for senators?
Absolutely, I support term limits for senators. I don't think for everybody, frankly. I don't think our founding fathers intended for politics to become an industry. I think they intended for people to step away from their careers and serve as servant leaders, not ambition and money and power and staying in office for so long. No, I think that in order to effectively represent and legislate, you have to come from a place where you have experienced the challenges that you've been charged with finding solutions to. John Cornyn is on 3 taxpayer-funded pensions. He's not worried about whether or not Social Security is going to be there for him, but I am.
How long would the term limits be for Senate and the House?
I don't know. I think it depends. I think 2 terms in the Senate is probably enough. In the House, I guess it would only be fair to limit it to the same number of years. So 4 terms.
Oh, Mr. West, you've, okay.
6, sorry.
Thank you. You've spoken about your years of experience in the Texas Senate as a key reason to send you to Washington. Here's the thing, there are a lot of people around in the Senate with experience. John Cornyn has a lot of experience. Despite that, we still have systemic problems in Texas and in Washington. Why should anyone who wants change be impressed by your experience? And you have 60 seconds.
Well, first of all, let's start with John Cornyn. John Cornyn, for some strange reason, has kind of been hollow in terms of his leadership in the state of Texas, not reflecting the 21st century values of this particular country. He's followed Donald Trump, frankly, off the cliff. And so we need to make sure we have someone in Washington that will take care of Texas values and not follow whoever the president is there, but make certain we represent the values of the state of Texas. And I'll do that as a United States Senator. When you begin to think about the issue concerning the impeachment, John Cornyn took an oath that he would listen to the evidence and then render a true verdict. He didn't even listen to the evidence. That shows you exactly how he's lost his moral compass as it relates to taking an oath and not following the oath. In terms of my representation, I've readied myself for this particular opportunity. The fact is that I have been in a Republican-dominated legislature, but I've been able to bring coalitions together and get things done, like the body camera legislation, racial profiling, hate crimes, working with Rodney Ellis, those types of issues. And so it takes a lot of work to be able to do that. I'll be able to bring that skill set to Washington to do the same thing.
Let me get your views on term limits in the Senate and House.
You know, the fact is that I think 2 terms as a United States Senator is enough.
2 terms in the Senate. What about the House?
About the same number of years.
Okay, sir. Thank you. We have more questions now, and let's go to Gomer.
Let's talk about guns. You both support restrictions on assault-style rifles, and we know, sadly, there have been mass shootings in Texas, places like El Paso, Odessa, Santa Fe. But you don't support mandatory buyback of assault-style rifles. Ms. Hegar, just to be clear, if you don't support a mandatory buyback program, are you okay with people having these type of guns?
So I feel like I'm uniquely positioned to speak with credibility on this for a couple reasons. One, I was trained in these weapons. I use these weapons for their intended purpose, which was war, not on our streets here on American soil. We don't sell other weapons of war to the public. We don't sell RPGs and tanks and C4, and I don't understand why. Well, I do understand why. It's because of money and politics and the powerful gun lobby that's pocketing or padding the campaign account of people like John Cornyn. I've been endorsed by Giffords and Brady and Moms Demand Action because as a gun owner and a toddler owner, this issue is very personal to me. I'm a gun violence survivor. I was also shot in Afghanistan. I've seen what these weapons can do. We don't need to have them in the hands of civilians, but I will only support the things that I think will, 1, move the needle on gun violence, and 2, they have to be pragmatic and enforceable and actually something that we can physically do for me to support it. I'm not going to pander to one side or the other and say that I support something because it makes it easier for me. If I see a plan that I think is executable and doesn't infringe on people's rights, then, you know, that would be a different conversation.
So in 30 seconds, can you tell me again, why not support a mandatory buyback program?
I think that this is something flashy that people are really focused on, when universal background checks would save so many lives. It would have stopped the Midland Odessa shooter, for example. And I was an hour outside of Odessa. I was in Midland when that shooting happened. So this topic, again, is very personal to me. I believe there is so much low-hanging fruit that we can do something about. Universal background checks, fully funding the CDC to make sure we undo the decades-long ban on research. We also have to, again, end Citizens United, because as long as John Cornyn's cashing gun lobby checks, he's going to be legislating in their best interest.
Senator West, how do you keep assault-style weapons out of the hands of folks that will do harm? Why not a mandatory buyback program?
I'm encouraged about what's going on in Virginia. Virginia decided to elect Democrats, and as a result of that, we're beginning to see some movement in that position in terms of assault weapons, banning assault weapons, and several other laws. I'm also in favor of red flag laws that we need to put in place. We had red flag laws here in the state of Texas, and when we had the El Paso shooting, then the grandmother, I think it was, of the young man in Allen who reached out and said that he had issues, maybe police would have been able to go and figure out what those issues are had they had better information. So I'm in favor of that. In terms of the issue concerning guns, I was the first state senator that filed a bill in the legislature in order to ban assault weapons, universal background checks, and also reducing the size of the magazines, and also looking at the issue of the bullets. And so I've done that type of work. In terms of the buyback program, I think it should be voluntary. A volunteer buyback program. I don't want to see the government go into people's houses to figure out whether or not they have guns in their possession. I don't think that we should be using that particular constitutional, we should be abridging that particular constitutional right in the United States.
Thank you. Sally, I believe, has a question about the environment.
I do. Thank you both. This question, you both have 60 seconds to answer. The practice of injecting water into the ground to extract oil and natural gas is fracking. Environmentalists say it has a negative impact. Mr. West, question goes to you first. Would you support a federal ban on fracking?
I would support a federal moratorium on fracking until we could figure out a couple of things. In terms of the issue concerning climate change and the whole issues around that, I support climate change initiatives, and we need to make sure we get to net zero greenhouse emissions by 2050. I want to put that out on the table. We've got to make certain in terms of the fracking that we put in place a situation where the agency responsible is adequately funded in order to monitor the fracking. We must have a moratorium until we can figure out exactly what chemicals are going into the ground and the impact that it's having on our water supply. Until such time as that occurs, I would be in favor of a moratorium.
And Ms. Hegar, would you support a ban on fracking?
I believe that climate change is not only one of our greatest national security threats, but also the greatest threat to my 3-year-old and my 5-year-old. So it is one of my, if not my top issue. I support aggressive action on climate change. But one of the reasons I've also been endorsed by a lot of the individual IBEWs, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, is because I have really dug in on this issue to understand how we responsibly get to a place of renewable energy, how we can ban the practices that are hurting our environment. So I am for progressing in that direction as soon as we can do it safely, as soon as we can do it without overburdening the economically disadvantaged people that can't afford to pay $3 more for milk or whatever it's going to cost for transportation fees. As soon as we can modernize our electrical grid and ensure that the grid can handle peak load under the summer months when everybody has their air conditioning on, so that we're not seeing people dying because their air conditionings are turning off. So I am for aggressive action on climate change, responsibly and pragmatically. I think this is an area that we can build a broad coalition of support. I've talked to a lot of people on both sides of the aisle who understand that climate change is a crisis and we need to fix it, and we can fix it without causing an economic crisis here in Texas.
Okay, thank you. And I want to stay on this issue and this topic, following up Mr. West. You and your opponent both stopped short of following your Progressive Party members when it comes to supporting the Green New Deal. If you want action on climate change, as you say you do, why didn't you support the plan? And you have 30 seconds.
Well, yeah, I guess it comes down as a result of experience. There are a lot of different opportunities and proposals surrounding climate change. And I agree that we need to make certain that we get the best portions of each one of the legislations, parts of the legislation, and pull it together and making certain we get a coalition of people that support it. That's the only way it's going to pass. Yes, there's some great opportunities as it relates to the Green New Deal, but it's also the Clean Futures Act. I want to make certain that people that are a part of the industry have an opportunity to get a job. And so we have to make sure that they're being trained. Texas has about 17% of our workers here in the state of Texas that are part of that industry. So we've got to make certain that as we transition and do that structural change, that they're not disadvantaged.
Okay, Ms. Hegar, let's talk a little bit more about this. You said this is so important to you. If your Democratic Party came to you with this important question and you happen to be the swing vote to pass a fracking ban in the Senate, would you?
So right now, we already have a senator that just does as his party tells him to. I don't think that's healthy, and I do think it comes down to experience. And I draw on not just my experience as a mom, but as a military officer. I have been faced with and understand how to accomplish a difficult mission with a bunch of people who disagree on how to get that mission done. I think climate change is too important to politicize with ancillary social programs that I actually might support separately, but I think when partnered all together do make it a difficult piece of legislation to pass.
Okay, before we move on.
It's too important to politicize.
Okay, before we move on to Gromer, I just want to make sure, if this were the situation today, if you were voting, you were the swing vote, would you ban fracking?
Being the swing vote on something has absolutely nothing to do with anything, in my opinion. I have faced real pressure, having the lives of my crew and patients under fire of 150 Taliban. That's not pressure to me. I think that's one of the reasons that I was so successful when I went to DC, is that I didn't cave to the special interests and the powerful people and all the marble and mahogany and the intimidation. So, I mean, if I'm going to support something, I'm going to support it regardless of the pressure of the party being the swing vote.
Did you want to add anything, Mr. West? Would you be a swing vote, and would you say yes?
Well, let me say this. The whole process, again, this is where experience and knowledge comes in. The whole process is a political process. The issue of climate change is, in fact, politicized. And so from that vantage point, you've got to make certain that you're able to pull together the coalition in order to make certain we attain our goal by 2050 by putting together Democrats, Republicans, and independents in order to move in that direction. As it relates to if I'm in the swing vote, I'll bring in the advisors to give me the best information possible in order to make the decision. I'm used to making tough decisions, and I would make that decision.
Okay, you would make that decision to ban or not ban fracking? I'm sorry.
Well, I'd make the decision right, depending upon what it does in terms of the water supply. If indeed it's harming the water supply, our life, blood here in this country, so to speak, in this world, then I would ban it.
Okay, Gromer.
Thank you. The enslavement of black people has been described as America's original sin, and African Americans still feel the impact today, particularly with economic inequities. Ms. Hegar, would you support reparations for descendants of slaves?
So this is an area where I would bring in people to make sure that I have the best possible information to make the best possible decision. And I think it would be arrogant of me to say that I have figured this out, because it's obviously controversial for a reason. It's something that we really need to study. Now, Congresswoman Lee, I believe, has put together a panel, and I would be supportive of whatever she decides and whatever that panel determines, because my involvement in questioning and research on that panel, I believe that is a fact-finding, nonpartisan, reliable way to reach an answer on that controversial issue.
Senator West, do you support reparations?
I support
60 seconds.
60 seconds.
Yes,
okay, thank you very much. Sheila Jackson Lee is a very close friend of mine. Excuse me, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee is a very close friend of mine. And we've had discussions about reparations. I want to see exactly what comes as a result of the study from that particular commission and the recommendations. Yes, I lean towards reparations. I mean, 401 years now since the first slave was brought to this particular country. The fact of the matter is I was able to go to Ghana to make certain I commemorated the 400-year anniversary back in August of last year. And yes, I know that we are now pulling together different people from across the country, across the world, have put together a coalition that's going to be able to deal with issues based on interest. Reparations is going to be one of those. But I want to make certain that the energy that we're generating by this coalition is reflective of who we nominate for the United States Senate. When you begin to look at my campaign, what you'll be able to see is that I have that broad-based coalition. But the fact of the matter is all of the nominees for the Democratic nominees for the United States Senate, they're supporting me in this race. They have endorsed me, and they know that I'll lead the charge to make certain that reparations and other issues are addressed.
A quick follow-up, Ms. Hegar. Does the price tag, there's some estimates say $14 trillion. Does that concern you?
I mean, anytime we're talking about a deficit, it concerns me. You know, anytime we're talking about a large price tag, but just because something has a large price tag doesn't mean it's not worth pursuing. I do think that we just need to be very intentional on what we're spending money on. I also think that there are, beyond reparations, as I mentioned earlier, there are things we really need to focus on, like healthcare disparities, disparities in capital for building small business, educational. So, I mean, I think it's a systemic reform question, and reparations is part of that conversation.
Mr. West, in 30 seconds, the cost, are you worried about that?
I mean, the fact is that from a budgetary standpoint, and I've served on the Senate Finance Committee for many years, what we'll be able to do, depends upon what the systemic issues are that we're trying to address pursuant to the reparations, we'll be able to put that in the education budget, the Health and Human Service budget, and get to those and establish priorities, funding priorities for reparations. We don't have to do it all at one time. We've got to make certain that we put it in different agencies' bills in order to make certain that those monies go for that intended purpose, be it education, healthcare, or whatever the situation is.
Sally has a question on another topic.
I do. Let's move on to the other topic, which is education tonight. Mr. West, do you support free college tuition, and do you support plans to forgive student loan debt? You have 60 seconds.
I do. The fact is that when you begin to think about my record on this, I've served on the Education Committee. I've been a champion in the state of Texas in terms of reducing the cost of education, from financial aid to making certain that students transferring from community college to a university won't have to end up paying for duplicative courses. I've been working on that. In terms of loan forgiveness, I think President Biden has a great plan. We need to make a look at income eligibility. It may end up being a sliding scale as it relates to the issue of how much a person in a particular income group would be able to get. And as it relates to free college, yes, we should change the way that we fund education in this country. There should be at least 2 more years of funding of education by taxpayers so persons can go to a community college, a university, or a vocational education program. We need to make certain we do that, and I will make certain that I work towards getting it done.
Ms. Hegar, same question to you, same 60 seconds to respond. Do you support free college tuition, and would you forgive student loan debt?
So I think that I come from a working class family. I was the first person in my family to graduate from college, and I don't understand why. It used to be there was a lot of pride in being a blue collar, working with your hands, and for some reason, somehow in this country, we've switched to the only pathway to any kind of dignity or respect is through college. Well, if that's the case, I do think we should be providing that opportunity for people. So I think that we need to change the way that we fund student loans. The government should not be profiting off student loan interest. I think we should change the way we pay back those student loans. People should have the opportunity to pay back those loans with community service and teaching and serving in the military and things like that. But we should also be supporting unions in their vocational training programs. I mean, I've worked with them for years and seen a lot of really exciting ways that we can get people jobs. I mean, in Texas, we have a job crisis in rural areas even before COVID-19, where, people's kids would grow up and graduate from high school and they would have to leave because they can't find a job. So, I think that working with unions and making sure we have vocational training for the important jobs that are the backbone of this country is also a piece of this conversation.
And Mr. West, since you say you do support a program like that, how are we going to pay for that?
I'm sorry.
You support the program like student loan debt, forgiving that, and free college tuition. But the question now is, how are we going to pay for that?
Well, again, you have to phase things in. You may not be able to pay for it all at one time, but it's just an issue of kind of reprioritizing exactly where the budget goes. Here's the issue. When you begin to look at the budget, 70% of it is already dedicated. So you only have about 30% in order to really do any discretionary things that you want to be able to do. And so we've got to figure out what our priorities are going to be. And I know that President Biden's administration is one of the priorities will in fact being education and helping to forgive student debt in this country, a $1.7 trillion in student debt in this country. And we've got to make certain we do something in order to begin forgiving that debt by community service or establishing programs that are mean tested.
Ms. Hegar, what do you think? How would we plan to pay for such a program like that?
Yeah, I think that that's part of my hesitation. I want college to be accessible to everybody regardless of income, but we definitely also have to make sure we can pay for it. I do believe we can pay for it easier if we have a strong economy where people actually are empowered to hold good jobs and put more money into the economy. And then when they earn more, they pay more in tax revenue. So I think that the more tools we can give people to be more successful and pursue that American dream, the stronger our economy and the less our deficit. But we need to be making better decisions from DC, and we are not making those decisions right now. People like John Cornyn supporting their corporate donors over their constituents is causing this problem.
Thank you, Ms. Hegar. Mr. West, next question is for you. Actually, we're going to stay with Ms. Hegar for this one. The last time Texas voters elected a Democrat to serve in the U.S. Senate was more than 30 years ago. What are you going to do differently to succeed where other candidates from your party have failed? And you have 60 seconds for this answer.
A lot of things. I think that we need to not take groups for granted and assume that they're going to support us. We need to earn everybody's vote. It's more than just not being that guy. John Cornyn has a very low approval rating, 37%. And yet a third of our state is still undecided on how they're going to vote. That is not a guarantee. That is an opportunity. And I'm going to seize on that opportunity by connecting with every community across the state and making sure that I'm giving them a reason to vote and that they understand that I hear them, that I'm going to take their solutions and their ideas and their challenges and their struggles, which are also mine, to DC. Instead of me thinking that I'm smart enough to go speak for everybody, I'm going to bring their voices with me. It's something that has made us very successful. It made us very successful last cycle when I ran for Congress and outperformed all of the projections in a district gerrymandered to be much redder than the rest of the state. We nearly won in a race where the incumbent won his last midterm by 32 points. So John Cornyn's vulnerable. He knows it. And we have an opportunity to take that seat back if we can earn it and show voters that our vision helps them keep food on the table and a roof over their head without having to work 3 jobs.
Mr. West, let me repeat the question, and you have 60 seconds as well to respond. What are you going to do differently to succeed where other candidates from your own party have failed?
The fact of the matter is I'm going to keep on working as hard as I have been in order to do that. I want to make certain that everyone understands this. We're in an historic time. 2020 is a year that many of us have never seen before, COVID-19, and then the racial unrest that we have as a result of the killing of African-American men and women. This is a perfect storm, a perfect historic storm. And people are tired of being tired, and they're fed up with being fed up. The fact is what we're going to see people turn out. We're going to see a coalition, as we have seen in these protests, between Anglos, African-Americans, Asians, Latinos, that will come together. And they understand that this energy that's being generated right now needs to be directed in the right direction in order to have meaningful change. And in order to do that, we've got to make certain that we're voting. We've got to make certain that we go around this entire state of Texas and get persons that have the same interests that we have in order to make certain that we turn Texas to a state that will be reflective of all of us. John Cornyn hasn't done that. We can do that together by making certain that the coalition that's being developed is a coalition that stays in power.
Thank you both. We have a few more questions to get to tonight. Gromer.
Thank you, Sally. These tough times remind us that every leader must face crises, defeats, and mistakes. And Mr. West, let's start with you. What's your most significant professional setback? How did you recover from it? What did you learn from it?
Repeat the question again.
What's your most significant professional setback? How did you recover from it? What did you learn from it?
Well, I tell you what, the first thing that comes to my mind is when I got into private practice, I was trying a case in Justice of the Peace Court. And I was representing the tenant, and I ended up losing that particular case. And I just thought my first case out of the district attorney's office, after having been a district attorney all these many years, trying as many cases as I have, that I end up going to JP court, trying a tenant case, and I end up losing that particular case. And I recognized at that point in time that just because I was the first African-American chief felony prosecutor in the Dallas County's history, just because I ran for district attorney means nothing when you get into a court of law and have to face a jury in terms of issues that they have to decide. And so from that particular experience, I learned that better preparation and the recognition that when I go into a courtroom, I've got to make certain that I do everything in my power to advocate the position, but also accept the verdict.
Ms. Hegar, do you recall a setback that you learned from, that you recovered from?
Absolutely. Easily, after I got out of the military, I was working in healthcare for 5 years, and I was growing a pre-existing condition in my belly, my first son named Jude, and I was facing getting laid off. My healthcare network got bought out by a bigger network, and our department, our entire department, my boss, everybody got laid off. And that was a huge setback. What did I learn from that? I learned, despite the fact that I should have already understood this, given the fact that I grew up going to public school with a single mom who worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table, but I learned the real visceral fear of not knowing if I was going to be able to provide for my kiddos. And I learned how it feels to lose your access to health care. And I think that I would take those learning moments with me, as well as working minimum wage jobs, and take those challenges that I've been through with me to DC, so that when we're legislating solutions, I can actually see what's going to work for people instead of what's just going to work for the wealthy and powerful.
Thank you. Now to Robert.
Okay, thank you so much. We're giving our candidates one more chance to speak. Ms. Hegar, you have 30 seconds for a closing statement.
Thank you so much. If all I have is 30 seconds, I got to say, Jude, Daniel, I love you so much. I'm wearing your bracelet. I know you heard us talk about a lot of really scary things tonight, but I'm here to tell you, Mommy's going to do exactly what I taught you to do with bullies. I'm going to stand up to and beat this person that's going to hurt people in Texas, and I'm going to make sure that we're taking better care of people. Now to John Cornyn, I know that you're watching. I've got bad news for you. This relationship is not working out, honey. I got to tell you, we're just not that into you. 37% approval rating. I mean, your approval rating is so low that even Ted Cruz is embarrassed for you.
Thank you, Ms. Hegar. Mr. West, your closing statement, please. You have 30 seconds.
I want to make sure that you understand that Democrats have an opportunity to make history this time around. And what we do in this election will have influence over the next 10 years in terms of issues concerning health care, women's rights, voting rights. All of those issues and many more will be impacted in terms of what we do this time around. John Cornyn, I'm coming for you. The fact of the matter is that you've got to make certain that you elect a person as your representative that has a record of bringing people together. That's a Royce West. Look at all the candidates, Democratic candidates in the state of Texas that have endorsed my race. And I ask you, humbly ask you to allow me to represent you.
Thank you, Mr. West. That does it for our debate of the Democratic runoff election for the U.S. Senate nomination. Thank you for joining us, and good night from Austin.